Welcome to the first episode of the Head of the Race podcast. I am your host, Maya, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Vuelta España, about the first stage, and also I'm going to try and introduce myself to anyone who's listening to this podcast, as of course, this is the first ever episode on this channel, on my personal journey that I'm going to start with podcasting. So hopefully it's not going to be too bad. So first of all, who am I? Why am I doing this? And what is this thing going to be all about? So my name is Maya. I'm a cycling fan. I love cycling. And I've started watching it just maybe around like a year ago. I feel like the sport is underappreciated for what it is. I feel like people just think cycling is this like straight line sport that you just kind of, I guess they just ride their bikes, and the Tour de France is like this little thing that they just ride their bikes and whatever. No one really gets into the nitty gritty, the tactics, the sometimes drama, maybe not as much as some people would like, which I think, yeah, of course, sports can be dramatic, but I feel like the pure sportsmanship and how amazing sport can be is just what I think is the most valuable thing in sports. And also, it's a sport that has a lot of amazing personalities, different teams, different races. You can just watch it for the whole year all around. And hopefully, maybe with this podcast, I'm going to start a little community that is going to learn more about it. So, yeah. Also, this podcast is probably going to be mainly a cycling podcast, but also we might talk about some Formula One, because Formula One is a sport that I've watched for a lot longer than cycling, ironically, but I'm not as into it as I am into cycling, because cycling, I think, is a sport that is just so amazing that when I started watching it, it's kind of overthrown all the other sports that I was watching. But I think F1 also has that amazing aspect to it that any other sport cannot just quite give you that extravagant, like different vibe to any other sport. It's a motorsport as well, so I feel like that's also a bit different. But those two sports are going to be the main ones that I'm going to talk about on this podcast. But cycling is probably the main one for me. But maybe we might talk about some MMA. We might talk about some tennis. You know, I'm an all-around sports geek, so I feel like this podcast is going to be my outlet. Even if no one listens, I'm gonna still make the videos. Like, I'm still gonna make the podcast episodes. So hopefully I'm not that annoying. But the reason I started this podcast is not only because of that, but also because I feel like it's a different, like, my point of view as someone who has just started watching cycling like regularly a year ago is going to be different than a person who has watched it 20 years ago, or the person who's been watching it for 10 years, or even 5 to like different time frames, basically. So I feel like I might also like learn along on the ride. We might learn about some different situations that happened, which I have really learned about as I've been watching cycling for a year. I've been on cycling Twitter, which we all know how that is. I've also been just on this little journey learning. So I feel like this is a good place for me to learn whilst learning with you guys, the listeners, or anyone who cares to listen to me talk about cycling for like some time. So hopefully this is going to be that little journey with us together. So I do not think I'm a specialist. That is for sure. Like, I know that I have so many gaps in my knowledge that are just, you know, you just learn things with time. But I think it's this little fun journey for me because I love cycling. It's just a part of me at this point. I feel like it's something that I just want to tell everybody about. And my family kind of motivated me to start this podcast because they were like, you just love to talk about this, so why not just talk about it on a podcast and start something of your own? So I was like, I guess I will. And also, just a bit about me. I am from Poland. I'm born and raised here. I've been here all my life. I've never lived abroad or anything like that. Probably one of the reasons why I'm so into sports is because I trained triathlon for 5 years of my life. I trained from when I was 11 till I was about 16. Then I was like, I cannot do this shit anymore, and I just quit. I've not like come back to it or anything, but I did start training cycling pretty intensely, I guess, after a year. So I've been doing cycling for a year. And also, when it comes to me watching cycling, like I said before, I've been really watching for a year, but, I was a casual for like probably 4 years. I'm like, not before that, but for about 4 years, including the year right now, which I still feel sometimes like I do not know some of the things that these people know, but I kind of want to learn along and I want to spread the message of cycling. So, yeah, back to what we wanted to talk about today, which is the Vuelta. So, the Vuelta is the final Grand Tour of the year. As we all know, it's probably one of the most, I think, chaotic sometimes. I feel like Vuelta tends to be quite chaotic from the Vueltas that I have watched myself and from the Vueltas that I kind of just caught up on. I feel like that race seems to be, a little crazy. So definitely one that usually are like, it's not going to be that interesting. It's the last Grand Tour of the year. Nobody's like really prepping for the Vuelta. Maybe Primož sometimes, but like no one is like really rocking for the Vuelta. Yeah, of course some riders are, but the big names are usually like more focused on the tour, like some classics or the world championships. But no one's like, I really want to win the Vuelta, like right now. Probably if you're like someone who has already won the other two Grand Tours or you want to do a double. Yeah, but not fully like the Vuelta is the race to go. For me, I do not care about the tour. I want the Vuelta. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Of course, like, but when Primož said that the Vuelta, that the tour is the perfect preparation for the Vuelta, that's when we all knew that man loves the Vuelta. Yeah, I'm just joking right now, but it's the final Grand Tour of the year, and surprisingly, it's a really packed start list when it comes to the GC guys. When it comes to sprinters, it's pretty much like two sprinters, no, but it's not as packed as we would have liked probably. So, whatever. You lose some, you win some. Of course, we have Team Jumbo-Visma, which Team Jumbo-Visma is like always an absolute like dream team, super team. These guys are just like, you see them in like, just like paraphrasing your rearview mirror. You're like, oh, fuck, I gotta fucking deal with this shit for the next 200 kilometers. So great. But these guys are very professional, as we all know. They are a pretty high budget team. I think they are probably like the third most, like the highest budget teams, or maybe like the second. But these guys got money. So they got really good riders, really good gear. Maybe not, also just a little opinion here. I do not know anything on the SRAM because personally, whenever I rode a bike on SRAM, I wanted to kill myself. So yeah, but when it comes to the team on Vuelta, they have a really, really stacked team. So they have Primož Roglič, of course, Robert Gessing, Wilco Kelderman, Sepp Kuss. Shout out to Sepp Kuss doing 3 Grand Tours in a year. Like, that man is just fucking insane. Because what do you mean? How are you doing this as a human? You're making me feel like I'm trash. Like, I was proud of myself when I rode like 60K. Then you got Sepp Kuss doing 3 Grand Tours in a year and just absolutely rocking everybody on the climbs. So that is just insane. I don't know how that man does it. And he's just an absolute beast. We also got Valtteri, Dylan Van Barle, and Jonas Vingegaard. We all know how insane this team is. Primož Roglič, of course, he has won the Vuelta multiple times, is an absolute monster on these kind of punchy little finishes on the top of hard climbs. And also Jonas Vingegaard, just absolute, like, the motor this guy has to climb up the climbs that he's climbing up with such, like, grit. Like, you just know that he's on a mission. When he's doing these climbs, it's so, you just have the utmost respect for him because what he's doing and how he's doing it is just, we need to respect that kind of person. And so this team is just, I think, insane. Like, you have a probably a chance of doing a double leadership. Like you have a chance of doing a double leadership. Like, of course, sorry guys, I might be, a little bumpy. It's the first one. So you have double leadership situation. So you can throw things at a guy like Remco. Of course, we're going to talk about him a little bit in a sec. You have a guy like Remco. He's going to be, also Remco is one of the guys, he's not as experienced. So he's also might be a little bit more nervous sometimes on these like kind of situations where you got two leaders doing something. Because what we've seen last year with Jumbo on Tour de France, you can see that this team likes to do a little bit of, double situation. When you got one guy doing, the other guy, kind of also does a little bit of something. So you're forcing the guy you're racing against just kind of like kill him. You're like kicking him. He's getting, you're punching him in the stomach a little bit. So when you get that final blow, he is down. So they're definitely going to use that. They have just like, Sepp Kuss, Wilco Kinderman, like these guys, like they're just going to have support in the mountains. Not that they'd even need like support. Like they're top athletes, but they just are insane. So this team is one to definitely watch out for. I'm doing this podcast after watching the first stage, so I was like, probably would have said, yeah, they might win the TTT. We all know how that turned out, and we're going to talk about it later because it was an absolute, just a joke. So that team is just dangerous. So be aware of them, of that yellow jersey. Just totally worth watching just to see the dynamic between the two. I wonder how Jumbo is going to play this when you have, because you can say, yeah, we're going to do a double leadership, we're going to make sure that both guys are in there. Yeah, but I wonder if there's going to be like a situation where you have a decision of, are you pulling for Remco, are you for Roglic? What are they going to do? I'm just curious because you got Primož Roglic, the guy who has just done amazing things for the team. Like he was like their like first real GC guy that, for the Jumbo team specifically was like, we have this guy who can do amazing things. But then you got Jonas, who has given them the win of the Tour twice. We all know it was the team as well, but on that final climb, at that final moment, he was the guy who was pushing the pedals, and he was the guy who was winning. So it's a difficult situation. I would not want to be in Grisha's shoes. He has the decision. He's the guy who just basically is like, yeah, we're gonna do this. It's difficult, but definitely interesting to see that dynamic. And also, it's also going to be the very first actual realistic meeting of the two guys that are Jonas Vingegaard and Remco Evenepoel. So now we're going to get into the Soudal Quickstep team. I just decided I might not read all the guys out, but just so you know, Evenepoel does not have such a strong team like Jumbo-Visma. He does not have such support that, like Jonas or Primož have, but he is Remco Evenepoel. So you cannot cut him out ever. He won the Vuelta last year, even though we all know that last year when things were getting ugly, Primož was like, I'm going to use my high cycling IQ. I like to call it that way. I like to just, kind of explain why I think he's smart. I think he reads situations well, even when he's not the fastest, the strongest, the best guy. He uses his brain per se, and he just kind of thinks, what should I do in this situation? What should I do? So that's why I think he's so amazing at what he does. So he has already raced Remco Evenepoel, but Remco Evenepoel has not yet raced Jonas. Like, realistically, have not raced against each other fully. So Remco has, he has been preparing for this race. He kind of had that weird situation at the Giro, like where he got COVID and he was feeling really, really awful afterwards. Like, he was telling a lot of people that he just felt really bad after getting COVID. Even if you get COVID, sometimes it's like a cold. But for him, he was like, he felt terrible. From what I read in interviews, he felt terrible. So even though he still got that full preparation. But then you got a guy like Jonas who won the Tour. He was, of course, prepared for the Tour full on. Like he was, ready for the Tour completely. But after you win the Tour, you have to do, some press runs. You have to do some interviews. You have to go to your country. You have to do all that stuff. You, of course, have to rest. Like, you've just been racing for 3 weeks against a guy like Tadej Pogačar, head on. So you have to rest after that. Not even for your body, but for your mental health. Because that must be just the most stressful thing when everybody's like, he has to win. He has to win. He's carrying that jersey. You cannot fall. You cannot do any silly things. You just have to be that guy that just pulls through. So that must be exhausting for you, not even for your physical health or for mental health. But now he's racing against Remco. So it's really interesting to see how he's going to look when it comes to his climbing. Because, he's not that prepared. But then you have Remco, who just absolutely is going to utilize that, because he's going to use that preparation that he has been, preparing. So he's going to try to wear him out. I think he's going to try to wear him out. He might do some early attacks. So I feel like he might just, try to just see. They're never racing against each other. So it's like a tricky situation, because you don't really know how they're going to kind of respond to each other's attacks, how they're going to look against each other. So I feel like that's a very interesting dynamic that we are all very excited to see. The next team that we're going to talk about is the UAE Team Emirates. I'm really excited to see this team. You might think, they might not seem like the most probable to win the GC when you got these guys like Primož, who's been preparing. You got Jonas, who's the winner of the Tour. You got Remco, who's the previous winner of the Vuelta, the World ITT champion, the World World champion. So you're like, but these guys are still going to bring the drama, and I know it. I know they're going to bring the ciclismo to the stage. So we got Juan Ayuso, of course, that young superstar that he just takes you whenever he's riding. Like, he just takes you with him. Like, you just see that guy has that passion for cycling, and he just has what it takes to be a great cyclist, that mentality of winning, which I think some of the cyclists might lack. But a guy like Juan Ayuso, he's just going to take you with him whenever he's trying to win the stage or whenever he's trying to take some time. I feel like that is going to be, he has just looked so incredibly strong on some of these races. And coming back from injury, he still showed us that he's absolutely the man. He was like, do not doubt me. I will do some crazy stuff on this race. Then you got João Almeida. João Almeida. That's a Portuguese name. You got João Almeida, who I feel like he's just one of those people that you might think he's not, that punchy. He doesn't have that finish, maybe. Or maybe he's not that explosive. But I think myself, he sometimes races in a weird, maybe not that smart, but kind of smart tactic, because, he just rides for himself. Like, he just goes his watts. He's not explosive. He just goes. But then you're like, he's dropped. He's been dropped 30 kilometers ago. But then you get like, wait a minute. That guy is third on the stage. So, of course, sometimes it's like you lose some, you win some. But that guy sometimes maybe sticking with what you know is what you should do. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. This is why it's interesting, because you got a guy like Ayuso who is going to be that a little bit more explosive, a bit more following, attacking. But you got a guy like João Almeida who might not do that as much. But then you're like, I wonder how that's going to look. That's kind of what I'm thinking with this. Also, we got, of course, Jay Vine on the team, which I was so excited when he got announced as, part of UAE Team Emirates, because he's just an exciting rider. I just loved what he did last year on the Vuelta when he was winning those stages, and he was absolutely showing people that you might think I'm just some guy on this Alpecin team, but I can ride. I can do this. So I feel like he's also really exciting. I hope he might stay away from the crashing, because I just hate it when cyclists crash. Like, it's just such a sad thing to see because these guys work so incredibly hard for these races. They prepare. So I just hate to see that happen. Also, another guy that might show something interesting on this race is Geraint Thomas. I am so excited for Geraint Thomas because he's just, I always set him as the standard of that fair, just smart, incredibly prepared racer. He's just a person that knows what to do. He's been here for quite a while, we all know, but we appreciate him so much. We love him. I just absolutely love Geraint Thomas. I just think that sometimes people might think he's not that good. He's not that strong. He's not that, he's not that anymore. Like, he's too old. But then he does amazing things like he did this year at the Giro. He was not the showman maybe, but he was doing it. So I think it's really interesting. I just hope that we might see something amazing from him. He got Egan Bernal supporting him, which I kind of was surprised about. I thought maybe after the tour he might, chill a little bit, maybe not do the Vuelta, but he decided to do it, of course. They got Fit Pagana, which I think might try to, do something on the TT, on the ITT, not the TTT, of course. And also, we had Lawrence de Plus, but we all know how that happened, what happened. But we're going to talk about it like right now. So that is basically a little like round out of the teams and all that stuff. But when it comes to the stages, I think the stages that I'm really interested to see is definitely stage 3, because that stage is like, you're just at the beginning of the race. It's still hectic. It's still crazy. It's still like insane. You don't know what's going to happen. No one is like really that into the race, but then you're climbing so intensely. I'm just really excited for that stage. I think it's a beginning that we don't really get that often in cycling. This year in the Tour, it was a pretty intense beginning of a Grand Tour, and we all know what happened when it was such an intense beginning of the Tour. So I feel like that stage is going to be definitely interesting. Also, stage 6, I think, can be a really interesting one because they're almost riding up to almost 2,000 meters above sea level. So I feel like that might be one of those stages where we start to see some cracks in someone's armor. So I feel like that's a really interesting one. I also like, I think the stage 9 might be interesting, but I don't know if that's going to be as GC packed because they're not climbing up that high for these guys. The TTT, of course, we might see if Remco has enough in him to just kind of get some time off, like a Jonas or a Primož. But after seeing what the heck Jonas did on that Tour de France TT, you never know. Because he might ride an incredible TT, but he might also not. So we'll just see. So that's one of those stages that I'm interested about. Also, the one that I'm kind of like really intrigued to see is the stage 11 because they are riding just this, like really, seems like an easy stage. They're going flat, but then like about 15 kilometers from the finish, they got this really like intense climb. They're not playing around. I feel like that might be also a pretty interesting one. They got maybe some of those, easier stage, but then you got stage 13, and that is going to be an absolute killer of a stage. These guys are going to be just, I just love that. They're doing the Tourmalet. When there's a Tourmalet, happening, you are just going to watch that stage. So definitely stage 13 is one to pay attention to because the Tourmalet is going to be we're just going to see who is going to do what they want to do on this race because it's 18 kilometers, almost 19 of 7.4%. Just imagine that. Like, I get tired doing 800 meters of that. So, yeah. Shout out to me. Then you got another one after the Tourmalet, which I think might not be like just the intensity of the stage itself, but the fact that they're doing the Tourmalet, just the Tourmalet just happened, and what their leg is going to be feeling like. So I think this is also pretty interesting. And also the stage 16 with that little finish at the end, and then you got stage 17 with also another riding, mountains, da, da, da. So it's just really, really interesting to see. I'm so excited for this Vuelta, just to see the climbing. But now we're going to get into the stage number 1 because we already know what happened on that stage. So we started the stage. I was watching it. I was like, it's just looking rough out there. Like, it's raining. Like, they have this weird little, this sort of ramp that they had to go down on, which was it just looked slippery on TV. So if that shit looks slippery, I know it's slippery for them. Like, I know it's slippery for them. So I was watching the race coverage. I was like, what are they doing? Like, but okay, it's raining. I already remember thinking, like, they starting this at 6:30. Like, is that like, I live in Europe. It gets dark around like 8 something now. I live in Poland, which is, pretty similar weather to Spain right now. But then, whatever. And so I was like, yeah, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Of course they know what they're doing. But then I'm watching the stage. I'm thinking like, yeah, the DSM finish. I was like, yeah, that's good for Bardet. He might not try GC as much, but, it's still nice for a team to finish first on a TT at the beginning of a Grand Tour. So we're like, yeah, they might finish, up there. But, I know that probably like Quick Step is going to come in and do their thing. Jumbo is going to come in and do their thing. Then you got UAE is going to do their thing. All those teams are going to do their thing. So I'm like, watching that. And I was like watching Trek Little. Sorry, I'm saying Little, but Little's like a big chain in Europe. So I was like, now I got used to just saying Little, which is so weird because I always call them Trek, but whatever. So they went out there and it was just chaotic. Like, they were just not together. It was just, they were not reaching each other's wheels. Like, it was just, it was chaotic, and you can see the nerves. Of course, it's the first stage of a Grand Tour. These guys are going to be nervous. They're not going to be they're not going to be riding perfectly. Even though these people are just masters of their craft, they are not perfect at anything. They are as close to perfect as you can get. But, they're still human. So, they're going to be a little nervous. They're going to have that little, they feel like they're slow. It's like, I'm slow, that kind of thing. I can just, tell you from my own experience, when I did race and triathlon, you just get that feeling like you wake up on racing and you're like, fuck, this hurts. I don't know what I'm doing. So, yeah. And I was like seeing Little. I was like, yeah, but it's raining. Like, raining is a part of the sport, of course. Raining is a part of it. So I was like, yeah, it's just intense. Hopefully the rain calms down. Well, we all know what happened. We all know what happened later. As the teams were going out, it was just like, I was just seeing like, this guy fell. It just was an absolute mess. And then UC Jayco, Alula, like, basically their entire team fell down on one of the corners. And that's when I was like, this is going to end badly. And not even saying this like a jokey way, but it was a disaster. Like, what happened there was a disaster. You can see these guys just like, you could see when they were on, the start line, they did not look comfortable. They did not look like they wanted to be there. And I do not blame them, because when you're organizing a race, you cannot allow for any team, any person, anyone to have to ride going 60 kilometers per hour, because this is the tempo that these guys reach. They're absolutely, like, they're rockets. They're there because they're the fastest cyclists in the world. That's why they're there. So how do you expect to start a stage at 6:30 and you know that this team's going to start around, like, the later teams are going to start around 8 p.m. And you know that the sunset is going to be at around also 8 p.m. Like I said, it just gets, like, dark around 8 p.m. And you're just going to let them race. It's so bizarre to me, not just because they're racing so quickly, but also they're the reason why you're making the money. They're the reason where people are there while people are watching. Do you think we want to see them falling down? Do you think we want them to see that they're freaking worried? Like, they just looked so worried. And, we get to the stage and then we see the bigger teams going out. So you're like, yeah, DSM, now it's going to, the big guys are coming out. And then Ineos comes out and just we were watching the stage. We were watching it. And literally 3 minutes, like 2 minutes, you can see the Palouse just, like, he has fallen so badly. He basically, I think, from what I saw, he kind of hesitated on the corner. Geraint Thomas also said he thought maybe he was going a little bit too fast, but also he just probably hesitated on the, it was wet, slippery, all that. Also, Ghana had a puncture later, but that's not even like the point of this. So he has fallen. He looks in pain. He DNFs. Like, already, what the hell is going on? You see these teams. You can see Jaco fall. Like, the whole team is off the bike. Then you can see some guys from this team falling down. This one down. It's hard to keep track of who fell because it felt like everyone was falling down, and it's just insane. So we're like, okay, you can see, so you can just see it getting darker and darker and darker. And I remember thinking, if I'm watching this and it's so incredibly dark, how are these people doing it? Because that sometimes they got filters on cameras that can kind of like make the video a little bit more light. So I'm thinking, if this is dark for me, I do not want to know what they're like seeing. I do not watch the English commentary because I'm Polish, so I listen to the Polish one. And luckily, from like the Polish commentary, we have a ex-rider as a commentator, and he was absolutely appalled, of course, with what's going on. Like, he was saying that he does not like this. He thinks this is terrible. He thinks this is dangerous. He thinks this is super, super not good from the organizers. But I heard there was like supposedly some commentators were like ignoring it, like they were not even talking about it, like the fact that it's dark. And like, these guys are literally risking their life right now for our entertainment. They're riding so fast. And you're like, yeah, we're just going to let them do it. We're just going to let them do it. It just feels like, as long as the money's coming through, we're just going to do it. But, whatever. But then we see Jumbo-Visma. They're going out. Then Jonas has a bike change from what Jumbo said. He had a puncture, so, yeah. Jumbo waited for him. That's why they lost quite a bit to Quickstep. Because Quickstep was, even though they were riding in the worst conditions, because they were riding in the darkest, most rainiest, that's not even a word, but the rainiest possible conditions, they still managed to do 17:36, which is really, really good time gap because they gained 26 seconds on Jumbo. So that's already a plus for them. But what the hell was that? So you see Jumbo, Jonas has a puncture, so he has to switch bikes, of course. And I was like already watching this. I was just watching this through like my fingers and my hands. I was like, I just don't want this to end badly. I love Primož Roglič, so I do not want him to fall down on this bike. Please. I was just watching this through my fingers, and I see UAE, and I remember this shot. I don't remember what kilometer was, whatever. I just remember seeing it. I was like, this is insane. Like, the traffic lights were just blinging at them. The car lights were also like blinging. They could not see anything. And the reason why I'm so I'm so intense about this, it's because these people are like, there's this weird thing in cycling where it's kind of like normal for letting these people just ride in whatever conditions. It's like, yeah, like whatever. We're just gonna let them do their thing in whatever conditions. As much as Formula One sometimes gets criticized for kind of like whenever there's like a drop of rain, we're not letting them race. Like, red flag, no race, get this over with. We're gonna wait for it to stop raining. And we're gonna let them out so they don't even need to use wet tires. They're just gonna need to use like intermediate tires. But when you see a sport like cycling, you're like, I rather have a situation like that when they're not allowed to race, when whatever, the organizers kind of care about what's going on. Although the FIA has its problems, but we're not gonna get into that. You're going to let them race in the dark with rain. Of course, it happens. But avoiding darkness is as easy as it gets. You know what you do? You look at the watch and you say, okay, we're not going to let them race at fucking 8. We're gonna let them race a little bit earlier, just like Remco said, which I fully support what he said, but we're gonna get into that in a second. What he said was, of course, true. I think, you can just prevent this whole thing from happening. You can just prevent it from happening. So that's why I'm so appalled by this. Okay. And then I see the UAE team kind of like going in the dark. I'm like, okay, this is horrible. I want this to end. And then we see, of course, Movistar going out, which they did so well. I was actually shocked because they went out in like one of the worst conditions as well, and they just lost only like if they would have rode into the finish line together, they probably would have been leading. But situations like that happen. But they still showed up, and I love that because Enric Mas, as much as maybe we're not thinking he's gonna be the guy who's gonna be on the podium, we still want to see him do something interesting because I feel like he sometimes is like that one person when you're like, I'm not expecting him to do anything, but then he does it, and I love it. So yeah, he might stir the pot a little bit, but then we can see Quickstep arrives. Remco just zooms into like the cameras and like his team personnel, and he's furious. And he's absolutely furious. Like, he was so angry after the stage. And I do not blame him, like I said again. I feel like Remco is one of those people that is so controversial. And I do not know why. Like, he's a person who just kind of, like, tells you whatever happened. And he's real. Like, he doesn't bullshit around it. He doesn't, kind of say what happened. But he's like, yeah, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Ha, ha, ha. Whatever. He just is like, that was shit. Like, that was whatever happened there, that was shit. Fuck you for doing that. You're an asshole if you think these are conditions that I can ride in. That just, like, basically is what I think. So he gets there. The team personnel just does not want to let him, say anything. He's like, because they do not want that kind of like hate on him. Because it's not that they don't agree with him. It's just like Remco gets this weird amount of hate. I do not understand it. He gets hate for celebrating stage wins. So yeah, cycling is a weird sport, to say the least. Like, it's that kind of sport when you're like, I feel like sometimes individuals kind of get hate from being individuals. I know that because not maybe as much on the internet, but from people that I know. Sometimes people hate on Pogacar maybe. Like, he's like, he's showing off. He's looking cocky. Yeah, he's winning a Tour de France stage. Like, he can be cocky. He's not even cocky. Like, he's proud of himself. So yeah. But yeah, Remco basically said that going in these conditions felt like going 200 kilometers per hour on the highway in the dark without any lights. He did not see anything. He also felt that this kind of thing is like, you just don't respect the riders. And I, of course, believe that as well. I feel like it's just showing absolutely no regard to the safety of the riders. It's just appalling. Like, you cannot do that. If you're organizing a grand tour, you kind of set yourself to a standard, which I feel like, yeah, sometimes the tour maybe messes up and the Giro messes up, but you just cannot let that kind of situation happen where you let these guys go out in these conditions. Verbeek also said that he could not, and I quote, could not see shit. He said they couldn't even see corners. They had the radio basically like tell them like 200 meters to the corner, 100 meters to the corner. So that is just insane. I cannot imagine that even happening. I don't know. I'm just so baffled by this. Also, Grant Thomas said that basically the organization, like, they just didn't care. Like, they didn't even apologize to them. He said that on the basically before the second stage. So the second stage happened today. I'm probably going to talk about it. I'm going to do a bunch of maybe like podcasts talking about stage 2, stage 3, all that. But just no regard to what happened yesterday. Just kind of like, yeah, we just did what we did. It's that kind of situation when you're thinking, what are we even doing? What are we even doing? Because like the Blue said, training for months, you're sacrificing your life, you're sacrificing your family, you're sacrificing your free time, and then you're just met with absolutely like, I mean, like this. Also, not even talking about the darkness, the rain, whatever, but the fact that it was a TTT, and I felt a lot of people also felt that the course was just too technical. It was so weird. I just did not like it. I feel like it's not paying respect to the format of a TTT. A TTT, I don't feel like they should be going 50. I feel like they should be going quickly. And I'm not saying that they're fucking going slow, but like, if they're going 50 on a TTT, that course is too hard. You just know it. It's dangerous. Like, it's just dangerous. I hated that stage. Also, I kind of hated today's stage. Don't want to really get into it, but when I saw the pictures on Twitter of the finish line, like drenched in water, like not even exaggerating, like it was like, yeah, hopefully the riders got boats. Of course, it got cleared out, but it's insane to me that it's just all like so messy, so last minute. And I'm saying this as a Polish person. So I watched the Tour de Pologne, which we all know is just shit. Like, Tour de Pologne should not be as big as it is. I feel like that race is just absolutely, like, it's a mess. Like, it's a mess. So, I'm setting up myself to a standard of a person that's Polish. So I know a lot about the Tour de Pologne. But yeah, basically this is what happened. This is what I think about the Vuelta. This is what I think is going to happen. When it comes to what I think is going to win, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm on the fence on this one. My heart says I want Primož to win. But first of all, he crashed today. Unfortunately, roundabouts and Primož. Not a good mix. So he crashed today. But then, I don't know, really. I feel like I need to see that third stage. I kind of need to see a little bit because, if Jonas is on form like he was on tour, like on the tour, I think he's going to take it. I feel like he's going to take it. It's that confidence. It's not even like the physical side. It's like, I'm the shit. I just won the Tour de France. No one can stop me. Who's Remco? Like, I'm Jonas. Do you know what I mean? Although, you still have to have that kind of respect to a guy like Remco, like Primož, of course, because like I said, Primož is just a smart guy. Like, he's just smart. He's really, I like his tactics. I like how he thinks during the race. I like what he does. But Remco, he just has that, he can hold power for such an incredible amount of time, and he's just very consistent, and he has that amazing mentality where I feel like, when he said after the race, he was like, if no one's going to talk about it, it's not going to change. And I love that. Like, you're holding these organizers accountable, and you're telling them what you're doing here is a disgrace, and I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to scream it. I'm going to make sure every single station knows that this is horrible. So I respect him so much for this, because there might be some people that are like worried, they don't want to talk about it, but he's the person who is going to talk about it. So thankfully a guy like Remco exists. So yeah, this is good for the sport. It's like sometimes there are athletes that are just extraordinary, not because they're the strongest or like whatever. Of course, he's amazingly, like, he's incredible, but also they just are not afraid to talk about their opinions, what they think, and all that. So incredible respect to Remco. I feel like Jonas might take it if he's on form, but my heart says Primož. So hopefully that happens. Yeah, but this is the preview of the Vuelta. This is the kind of debrief of the stage. Hopefully someone enjoyed listening to this podcast. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. Of course, I'm just, just the baby steps. I might be stumbling on my words. Of course, English is not my native language. So sometimes, I might sound like blah, blah, blah. But I just kind of am learning as I go. Hopefully this is going to continue to grow. And hopefully we might learn something together. Because like I said, I do not claim to be the smartest, the most knowledgeable. But I just want to talk about this. I just want to talk about the cycling thing. And hopefully someone wants to listen to it. So yeah. Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully, I'm going to talk about another stage really, really soon. And if you like the episode, tell me what you liked, maybe, or what you didn't like, also, because that is, I think, the most important. If there's something that you feel like is just appalling and you cannot get over it, please let me know, because I want to listen to that. I want that criticism. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to get to know stuff. So thankfully you enjoyed this, like I said, and you're going to listen to another episode that is going to come out probably in a few days. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching.